A dispossessed and stateless dynasty after 1,000 years of rule. So the story of my family. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Heinrich XIII Prince and the successor of an ancient German dynasty that can be traced back to around 900 AD. So it was over the period of 1,000 years and not of a mere 5 years legislative period that our family successfully shaped Gera and the surrounding regions in Thuringia. Until 1920, Gera was among the richest cities in Germany with a tax rate of around 10%. In the following 10 minutes, I would like to talk about the causes of abolishing the monarchy and the suffering that came with it, combined by the subjection of the reputed government structures that are still in effect to this day, with tax rates which force you to work until September or October of each year. I would like to talk about the people affected by this, people such as my family. Expropriation, murder, and expulsion on the basis of manipulated so-called political events, all of them the creation of opponents to these structures that had proven themselves successfully over thousands of years, all because this would have made it difficult for these opponents to implement their debt-based model. Debt-based business model, excuse me. 1918-1919, my great-grandfather, as the reigning prince, was forced to abdicate under unfounded pressure, as he was not guilty as a consequence of World War I, which can today be proven to have been instigated by foreign powers. Up until then, everything was fine in the principality ruled by the Royce family, and people were leading happy lives because the administrative structures were straightforward and transparent. If something was not going well, you approached the prince. Who are you supposed to turn today? To your parliamentarian, local, federal, or EU level? Good luck. It was the abdication of my great-grandfather along with the sovereign houses and the surrender of their lands to the regional authorities which facilitated the physical formation of the Federal Reserve of Thuringia as we know it today. He had a right of rescission from this abdication agreement should there have arisen a tax disadvantage associated with the remaining private property and or if it was dispossessed again. We did in fact exercise this right of rescission. This was in case with the occupation of Thuringia, however, not by the Soviets, but by the German communists. It was these very German communists who denounced my grandfather to the Soviets solely on the basis of these assets, thus out of envy, but not for political motives, and are thus responsible for his murder in the hands of the occupiers. No court, no one in politics wants to address this issue to assume responsibility. The expropriation incident of my grandfather was later broken up into 180 individual legal proceedings. Why do you think they did that? What might have been their motive? All large laws are involved in government, all large law firms, excuse me, are involved in government contracts and are hence unable to represent us against the reputedly existing state. Whatever happened to separation of powers? It is an illusion. The deception in the legal system, because there is no separation of power. Judges and public prosecutors are beholden to others from politicians. We have submitted a petition for the review of this issue and to initiate a procedure against the Federal Republic of Germany. My family had been fleeing for the state of Hesse in West Germany when the Soviets invaded Thuringia in 1945. Penniless, expelled, dispossessed, and stripped of all rights. Why? Because in 1947, the State of Parliament, Thuringia, on the initiative of the communists Eiermann und Fröhlich and not of the Soviets, ratified the law on expropriation of the Thuringia dynasties. Pursuant to this law, up until today, since this law was not being repealed, we are not allowed to claim any property in our name. Whether we have also been deprived of our nationality is contested, but it has been confirmed by legal experts. All my attempts to make contact for repeal of this discrimination law, no personal property, no nationality, to the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, Lavrov, and the current prime minister of the federal state of Thuringia, have been without any result. They were negated with evasive written replies and without acknowledging the facts. Since the reunification in 1990, in other words, for 30 years, I have been dealing with these events and this issue, and to be clear, with my own financial resources. And today, after 30 years of doing research, I believe I have come to find out the root cause of the historic developments and the current state of our society structures. What is behind all these wars, revolutions, and who actually benefits from it all? Quote, I cannot but puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire. And I control the British money supply. Nathan Mayer Rothschild, 1850. The representatives of the Rothschild dynasty are proud of the fact that they financed the French Revolution and countless other acts of aggression, such as wars around the globe, with the sole objective of establishing corporate structures and the business of money and debt by abolishing the monarchies. For a long time, entering into any debt was frowned on among aristocracy, which has been and still is a thorn in the side of the financial powers. How was the Freemasonic finance the position to push through the October Revolution in Russia in order to gain access to the country's treasures and money production? We know from the Australian author Christopher Clark, who works in Cambridge, that the Germans alone did not initiate World War I, but that foreign powers, I say, it was international financial interests, wanted it exactly that way. Germany has been paying for this until today. Who benefits? Quote, from a paper without reference to the sources titled Novus Ordo Seclorum, replace monarchies by socialist governments, then by communists, then by despotic powers. Keep the masses poor and compelled to perform unending labor. Of course, the alleged reason of World War I, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Sarajevo, was also financed by the Masonic Lodge, geared at further provoking a world war. The British declared the merchant fleet of Germany as a war fleet, and hence a Latin fleet and casus belli. The passage of the communist Lenin through Germany in the steel train filled with gold and money makes one thing, as well as the assassination of the leader, healer, and advisor of the Tsar family, Georgy Rasputin, by the British Secret Service agent Raymond. The last German emperor did not abdicate himself, but rather he was removed from the throne with Markgraf Max von Baden acting as his substitute, caving in the pressure by the Americans. So Markgraf von Baden, in the name of the emperor, abdicated the throne for him. Yes, He was abdicated. I know all about this firsthand. The British could have never won World War I without capital of coming from the United States. But it came with string attached. The intention was to use the state of war to drive the expulsion of the Jewish population in order to create a separate state of this segment of the population, which turned out exactly as planned through Hitler and his US-financed sovereignty. Why financed by the US? The leading US banks, businessmen like Henry Ford and others made large sums of money available, also supplying materials and fuel, helping Hitler onto his feet. How else could prostrate Germany have been in a position to finance the activities of Hitler? It was, I believe, 1871 when private finance denied the US warring parties cash flow to finance their wars. Belligerent politicians were only granted additional loans once the sovereign state of America declared itself a corporation, which is exactly what happened. Ever since Germany surrendered on the 8th of May, Germany has never been sovereign again. It was made into an administrative structure of the Allies in the so-called United Economy Entity, Federal Republic of Germany. In other words, a commercial structure. Quote, Germany is American protected and forced by the tribute as vassal state, former US safety advisor C. Brzezinski. Former President Obama spoke the following words during his visit in Ramstein, US military base, Germany, quote, Germany is an occupied country and will continue to remain so. James George Stavridis, US Navy Admiral, communicated as follows on order of the Allied Kommandantura in Berlin. The blithering idiots in occupied Germany are being constantly installed with the notion that the Federal Republic of Germany became sovereign state with a 2+4 agreement. But that is wrong. This is why the first German federal chancellor after World War II, Konrad Adenauer, spoke these words, quote, we have no mandate from the German people, we have instructions from the Allies. The German Basic Law is not a constitutional and was written by the Allies as a regulatory measure of the administration of occupied Germany. A constitution can only be installed by a sovereign state with sovereign citizens. The United Nations Charter still lists Germany as an enemy nation. What does that mean? The signatory states may impose coercive measures against enemy nations without a need of special authorization through the UN Security Council, which happens on a regular basis. Germany, up until this day, due to the lack of the peace treaty, is being controlled based on the administrative structures installed by the Allies after World War II. For West Germany, all of Hitler's laws were supposed to be replaced by the Allied SHAEF Treaty. SHAEF means Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Forces. Unfortunately, it is not the case. What's more, so-called Federal Republic of Germany is the legal successor of the German Reich, Hitler's Germany, and not of the sovereign German Empire. From this causality alone, no sovereign structure exists for Germany. Until this day, German tax authorities apply Nazi-era laws, which explains a lot of suffering caused by the fact. I have to make a long story short. I do so. I try. Quote, during the German Socialist Party Congress 2010, Sigmar Gabriel said, Mrs. Merkel is the CEO of an NGO. The Corporation Federal Republic of Germany has established additional companies trading with the land stolen from us until today. So I have to make it short. I plead in favor of a sovereign Germany and sovereign EU member states. We can only achieve this by the conclusion of a peace treaty, something which I would really urge the current President of the United States of America to do. The Soviet Union already offered this peace treaty in 1952 and partially renewed it at the time of the German reunification. Without the Allies, however, it's not possible for the Germans to conclude a peace treaty. I'm asking you to advocate peace in Germany and therefore peace in the entire world. Thank you.
Prince Royce.